Goedemorgen allemaal. Jos, Tom, team, dames en heren, hartelijk dank voor de invitatie vandaag te mogen spreken. My name is Jörg Albrecht from the Radlogistiekverband Deutschland. That's the German Cycle Logistics Federation in German. And today I will speak a term we discussed about and why we did it and how we came out with a result. But first of all, I want to tell you just a short thing about our federation. The Radlogistiekverband was founded in 2018 and currently has around about 80 company members. 1/3 is manufacturers, 1/3 is operations like logistic companies, and 1/3 is service providers, software consultant, and so on. And we're very open to non-German companies that are willing to work or being active on the German market. So if you plan to do something in Germany, please feel free to get in touch with me today or with us later on. What we do is, beside the internal work as a foundation for our members, is we have a yearly market report publication. You can download it for free on our website. And we're hosting 2 events. One is the National Cycle Logistic Conference. This year is already done at the Eurobike in Frankfurt, but feel free to join us next year again. You'll find the date and the city on our website. And this is next weekend, Pedal 2, an event especially for operational companies, so courier services and so on. It's in Munich, and you can still get tickets for 29 or 49 euros. And you know, currently there is Oktoberfest in Munich, and this is a perfect opportunity to not go to the Oktoberfest, to do something different. The downside is this is in German, so it won't be an English thing. When we speak about cargo bikes in general, we have something in mind like this. So this is a photo from yesterday. So a bike which is more or less focused on private usage, for example, to carry your kids or your dog or buying things. And on the other side, there is something like this, so a bigger bike where you immediately see, well, this is not planned to be used to bring your kids to the kindergarten in the morning. So this is both a cargo bike, but it's a totally different usage. This is also standing over there. And we saw in the last, let's say, 15 years that we have a growing market in the cargo bike industry. But it's not only growing, it's differentiating. So we get more different bikes. And the borders are still growing. Like we have very, very small new cargo bikes, like maybe you know it, the Super Mighty, a very, very small cargo bike. And on the other side, we have growing cargo bikes that are getting bigger and bigger. And we have seen this example right here. Or you see the pony standing behind you. That's also a big trailer for a cargo bike. And it's clear that there is some separation between private usage and business usage between those cargo bikes. And when you go to different fairs like the IAA transportation or something where you see also cars, then you see that we have small to big bikes and small to big cars and vans. And nowadays there is a huge overlap, meaning you have now very big cargo bikes and cars that are smaller than the cargo bikes. And years ago there was no overlap. That was like you have big bikes and then it comes nothing, and then you start having cars. So now you have this overlap, and this is very interesting. Also in terms of regulation, because sometimes cars are not allowed, but bikes are allowed, and the bikes are even bigger than the smaller cars. So we felt that there is a need to differentiate between the private usage cargo bikes and a different class of cargo bikes that means something totally different. And we started a quite lengthy process with creative meetings and discussions, and we defined how do we want to have this term. Of course, coming from Germany, we initially thought about having a German word for Lastenfahrrad, but working internationally, we know it doesn't work when we use German terms for international problems. So one criteria was we want to define an English international term for this. And after having different iterations, we came upon the commercial cargo bike CCB as the opposite, as a commercial vehicle. So now we have both private vehicles and commercial vehicles, and we have cargo bikes and commercial cargo bikes. And before this talk, I had an email conversation with Jos, and he said, well, in Netherlands, we have this. We have bakfiets for private and cargo bikes, it's business. But bakfiets is a brand, so we didn't want to have a brand name as a category name for differentiating cargo bikes. And I'm not sure if people really know outside of the Netherlands that bakfiets is a brand name. Sometimes they are just misunderstanding it. So this is not a brand name. We want to have this as a category name where it's clear that it's a bike planned for commercial usage. And the aspects of the CCB could be, well, first of all, it's the main purpose of the bike. It's not saying that it's not allowed to buy a commercial cargo bike and use it privately, like you know it from vans or cars. Many people buy commercial cars and build private campers out of the commercial cars. So this could be also here, but the main purpose of this commercial cargo bike should be a commercial usage. So the design and construction are focused on one or more real business applications that could be transporting for a logistics company, but it's not, well, not the only one issue. You can do anything with a commercial cargo bike. Then the service level of this bike is planned for commercial level usage, meaning it should work like every day, all day, not only 20 minutes in the morning to bring the kids to the kindergarten and in the evening back. Then we need some kind of fleet management, because typically people that use commercial cargo bikes are not having just one bike, but maybe 10 or 50 or hundreds of bikes. So there needs to be some special manageability for this type of cargo bike. And the aspect of ergonomics and safety, meaning that you should have in mind that there is somebody, an employee that works or has to work all the day with this vehicle. So it's not a hobby, it's the place of your working time. In Germany, we have this icon since 2020, and I'm not sure if everybody in Europe has this this icon in the street regulations. Do you have this in your country? I only see no. That's what I'm my knowledge right now. So it's planned to have this on European level someday in the future, but it's not yet confirmed. It's just a German sign, and as you can see, the German sign more or less says, well, that's a long john, and from our perspective, it would be a more private cargo bike. But on the other hand, we know that there are many companies and a growing number of professional cargo bikes coming into the cities. So nowadays, we have no icon, no sign, no nothing for this particular usage. So our to-do is develop an official symbol for commercial cargo bikes, and hopefully to get this as an official symbol for German regulation, and by this maybe for a unified regulation on European level. So please feel invited to use commercial cargo bike as a term in your context from now on, and we hope that this is somehow helpful to be clearer in your communication. Thank you very much. Let's get in touch. This is the QR code to my LinkedIn profile, and I will be here the rest of the day so we can talk, and I think now we can clear questions, discuss it.
Absolutely. So just to be clear, yeah, that's you're working at the European level to try to get this adopted in Brussels and outside of the German context, more widespread acceptance of this term.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any questions in the audience? Yeah. Okay. I'll come to you in a second.
Hello, Richard, based in Oxford, in the UK. Your members in Germany, when they come to you as a new association, well, relatively new association, what are they asking of you? What do they want you to do in terms of relationships with the local authorities or whatever it happens to be? What are their problems that you're trying to solve for them?
Well, in general, to strengthen their business, to keep things going, to be stronger in a group of companies or people than being alone. Well, does it answer a question, or was it? What?
Obviously, that's a general answer, but I wonder if there are specific problems they're finding which might resonate with similar organizations in other countries and the way you're addressing them. And maybe you found a way of getting politicians to do things, for example.
Well, the problems are very, very individual from company to company and sometimes from city to city. So there is no single big issue why they are joining the RLVD. Well, typically, so one thing could be standardization. So we want to harmonize the ways transport companies on this level work, to have one strategy to customers, for example.
Okay, there was another question over here.
Yeah, hi. Maybe a simple one. Where would you draw the line between a private cargo bike and a commercial cargo bike?
So there is no hard line. It's, as I wrote, this could be the primary purpose. And there are even bikes that have, or let's say brands that have more than one main purpose. For example, you have an Urban Arrow where you would say, well, this is mainly with a big black crate in the front. This is the child solution for transporting your child. But on the other hand, they have this different front for the same rear to have bulky loads. So this would be the more commercial part of the story. Or when you're thinking of Bullet, they have the normal Bullet for family and stuff, and then the Bullet X that is mainly planned to be used for commercial usage. So there is no hard line between those two things. But I think when you go around here and ask the manufacturers, for example, they know their primary purpose of the bike.
Jörn from Cargo Bike Germany, representing 170 initiatives who, with a nerdy passion, try to bring cargo bikes to private people. Jörg, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation and this differentiation of CCBs as a differentiation to normal cargo bikes, because that is an issue. And my question, beside saying a great thank you for all the work you did with this small initiative, standardization, and answering Richard's question a bit, safety measurements and drivers and responsibility for that is another work which you do. How do you see the chance I think of all these parcel deliverers that illegally use the road now, which is with turning not only one but numerous blind eyes by police, not suing them for parking wrongly. And would they do so, Deutsche Post, UPS, and all the others, in next to no time, would use vans based on cargo bike CCBs rather than their bulky 7.5 or 3.5 ton cars. How do you see the chance to push the local governments to actually sue these companies for regularly parking illegally on the road?
You mean the illegal parking of vans or cargo bikes?
Of vans. No, cargo bikes, that's a measure of infrastructure and making place for that. That's also an issue, but my question is what can be done to get the local and national governments to actually act against the companies who, on a daily basis, do illegal things?
Well, that's a totally different question, and you're from Germany, right? I also think that's a very German problem, because when you look at, for example, now Utrecht, you don't see this problem happening here because they have Handhaving and we have Ordnungsamt. And this seems to be a totally different approach with dealing those things. So what Jörn, right, means is that large companies like DHL and so on, that's the daily habit, let's say it like this, to park illegal somewhere in Germany, and everybody whose job it would be to restrict it, like police or doesn't do anything. That's what you mean, right? So I have no real idea, but we're currently in a country or in a city where things work differently. So I would encourage people in Germany whose job it is to look, for example, to the Netherlands, how it works here.
Utrecht maybe, but not Holland.
Okay. Thank you for...
I think Rotterdam it's the same as in Germany.
I would suggest it's a fairly universal problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have no answer to this. Well, I wish I would, but I don't have it.
Does anybody have any suggestions? Jos, did you want to... A different question. Did anybody want to comment on this issue specifically? Not that it's the cycle logistic industry's problem to solve, but certainly one that... yes?
Hi, I'm Daniel from Brighton, over the water. It is a common problem over in the UK as well, van drivers parking illegally and badly, but I think it's indicative of the pressure that they're under to deliver their parcels. So, yeah, authorities could be doing more, but then they're stretched, money is tight, and having people in the right places to issue these fines, they're not often in the right place at the right time, because I've seen it myself, delivery drivers parking up half across the pavements, and it's like, what can you do? There's no one there to police it all the time. So it's got to come from probably within, the organisations like UPS, DHL. It's like telling the drivers, try to park legally, do not park on the pavements if you can. But then the pressures that they're under to deliver quickly, to the customers, is kind of like, excuse the pun, but driving this habit of bad driving and bad parking. So it's just is there a way to slow down the e-commerce side of things, that people become a little bit more patient, and so the drivers then become a little bit more chilled out and drive a little bit more sensible? Is there a way in which we can actually take the pressures off people so things are done a little bit more timely and sensibly?
And where I would suggest it does impact the cycle logistics industry is when drivers are parking in the bike lane and then they're blocking the cycling infrastructure. Cyclists have to veer out in the street. This creates a very unsafe situation.
I'd like to sharpen my point a bit. A perfectly right. The drivers are not the ones to be sued. It's got to be the companies. And where I see the link to cargo bike logistics is that if the companies, once they are sued, because the cars are GPS tracked, and it would be not that difficult to find out that that car at 11.5, 11.7, and till the end of the day, parked illegally. And if then the companies are addressed and be punished, then they would react, and then cargo bike logistic would get out of the niche fighting against these companies with an uneven measure. One is using cars parked illegally, acting against the law, and on the other hand, just trying to do it more sustainable. And then these big companies would then move and certainly would find micro-hubs and find solutions to get that. And that's why I find it highly important not to go against the driver. They're really poor lads. It's against the companies who, try to do it as cheap as possible. And once we tackle that, cycle logistics can get out of the niche.
Any other comments on this specific topic?
But maybe we should come back to the topic, but because now we're discussing about faulty parking of vans.
Yeah, a bit of a digression, to say the least. Okay.
Hello. No, I think the commercial cargo bike as a term is perhaps a useful one. I just wondered, would you characterize the need for this? Because in the presentation there was a lot of talk about size and weight and the overlap with cars and things like that. Do you think that the kind of using the term commercial as a proxy for size and weight is kind of useful in the context of the EN 17860 standard, which makes the distinction between like a heavy cargo bike and a light cargo bike, i.e. like up to 300 kilos and then 300 to 650 kilos. Like, do you think that commercial cargo bike spans those two? Should it? Is it just heavy things like a Fulpra? I mean, what's your kind of thought on that? And just as a kind of tag question on the back of that, is this for policy purposes, for like making space for them to park in cities? Would you envision separate provision for something that you're taking the kids to school on versus something that's delivering parcels? Sorry, it's about 3 questions, but hopefully you kind of get where I'm going with that.
Yes, so I will try to answer it one by one. So if I miss something, please just ask again. So while having this discussion about where the endpoint was commercial cargo bike, we had several different steps in between. And of course, we had the discussion about light and heavy or something. But we didn't want to have the word heavy in the definition because some heavy cargo bikes are not that heavy. And we wanted to say, well, in comparison to a van, everything is light. So we didn't want to have light or heavy as a term. That's one reason of this. And you could think of very specialized commercial cargo bikes that are small. Maybe like this one in the rear. There is this broadcast bike. Definitely it's a commercial cargo bike, but it's not a Fulpra or something. It's smaller, but definitely a commercial usage for a cargo bike. So yes, but on the other side, you could say nearly every heavy cargo bike fits in the definition of the commercial bike. So this way around, this could be true. And the next question was, I think maybe coming to this sign. Yes. So this sign in Germany is used in addition to other signs, like for parking. Like you can say, well, this is bicycle parking, especially for cargo bikes. These are a little bit longer and so. Yeah. But there is no differentiation between a professional cargo bike and a family cargo bike. And when you think about loading zones and so on, then it could be handy in the future to say, well, in the pedestrian precinct, there are spots for professional cargo bikes for loading and unloading, and we do not want them to be crowded with family cargo bikes. So, yes, in the future, that could be an option.
Okay.
Did it answer your question? Okay.
Jos, did you still have a question? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's. I'll come back to the term cargo bike again. When we started using the term cargo bike and the International Cargo Bike Festival in 2014, we got a lot of comments on the term bike because a lot of cargo bikes have 3 wheels or 4 wheels. So for English-speaking people, the term bike really refers to two wheels. And so they say, well, it's not a bike, it's a trike. And how do you see, have you been discussing that? Is that something that you also hear from other countries, or is it something that is not an issue anymore? Or haven't you been considering it at all?
Not in this discussion, because I think when we speak in Germany about bicycles, we don't think about bi as having 2 wheels. It's just a bicycle, and we. So, as our federation, we thought about how many wheels something should have, because we have 2, 3, 4, and even more wheels in our logo. So that was the reason why we have this logo in this case. So no, that I didn't get it. Sorry.
You want to make it an international term. I mean, that's the same in the Netherlands. Nobody thinks, cargo bike is not referring to the wheels, but like in Germany. But when you want to make it a European or a worldwide term, then you'll get this discussion. So that's why it
I understand. But in this discussion, that was indeed no point at all. Would you have a better idea to call it somehow?
No, and I think it's a fair point. It's an internal conversation we have at the Dutch Cycling Embassy as well, is how inclusive is the term bicycle or bike, indicating 2 wheels technically, and is there a term we can use like cycle or something like that?
But cycle, we discussed it, and cycle could also mean motorcycle or something, and we don't want to have a motorcycle in mind when speaking about bicycles.
Yeah.
So.
No, there's no perfect solution, and I think in other languages the word for bike doesn't have this 2-wheel connotation.
Like velo or something.
Yeah. Or fiets in Dutch.
Yeah,
exactly. Were there any other questions, comments, concerns?
Hi, Vojta from Prague. Basically, I have a question which is slightly touching on this point. I am from the city which is highly unfriendly towards the cycling at all, and not speaking about the cargo cycling, right? How you succeed to make the point at the municipalities? Because in my view, what needs to change the first is basically the landscape or how the city looks like to support the cycling, right? As we see it here. What is the points you make towards the municipalities to convince them that they want to perform that changes, to change the roads, to change the pavements and stuff, which is high investment things, in order to be city more friendly towards the cyclist and subsequently towards the cargo cycling?
Well, is the question for me or for you, because that's mainly your profession? I could only tell you my thoughts, but
I think it's an interesting point, because as an organization and as cycle advocates, professionals, we're so focused on the movement of people. We're designing infrastructure and lobbying for better movement of people to get from their house to their work, to their shops and schools and everywhere in between, that we don't often make that connection to the movement of goods. And there's maybe an opportunity there to engage with the private sector and make this case that this is actually multi-use infrastructure. It doesn't just work to move people, but it also works to move goods more freely as well, and solves this problem. We heard in the first presentation of vans clogging up the city, not moving very efficiently, and ultimately costing the private sector a lot of money in waste and inefficiency. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if you have anything to add, or maybe we can ask Philippe his perspective.
From my point of view, there are 2 things as well. First is cities, let's say in Germany, I don't know how it's in Prague, but cities in Germany try to become CO2 friendly or reduce CO2 emissions, let's say it like this. And there are, of course, different approaches to this. And one approach could be to reduce the cars and to improve cycling infrastructure, cycling usage, and so on. This is the first thing. And then the second thing is the density of cities. So Prague is an old town, so there are small cities in the center. They weren't planned to be used by trucks and hundreds of tourists coming into the city. So when you want to have many people in the city, because people mean money and not cars, then you just get them into smaller things. Well, you have the metro in Prague. This is one thing other cities do not have as public transport and buses. But I think, yes, Prague could also improve in cycling infrastructure. And when you, for example, this morning come to Utrecht Center and I cycled to Jaarbeurs, I would say there is physically no way, except a metro, for example, to get so many people in this time into the city. There were hundreds of cyclists together with me. So that when they sat in cars, it would be, well, I wouldn't be here then. Maybe later.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, everyone knows about the more recent transformation of Paris, and obviously that was motivated again by giving Parisians choices during the pandemic in terms of alternatives to the metro during a time of contagion. But one thing we've seen more recently there is an absolute explosion in cycle logistics that are using the same infrastructure that was initially intended for people. So I think there's a case to be made for both sides there that could be quite compelling.